things did not go well at all for Deion Sanders and the Buffs in Eugene, Oregon. I'm going to talk about what went wrong and what the heck to make of this Colorado team after what was a devastating loss.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the postgame recap of the Colorado absolute thrashing by Oregon. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team. Faster and for free, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Woof. Okay, this is Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Bora, the host of Locked On Buffs, which is free and available wherever you get your podcast, your team every single day. Even if your team gets blown out, almost shut out 42-0, let's just say that Colorado matchup did not go nearly as planned. I'll just start the episode or the live off by saying I was wrong, by saying that Colorado was going to win the game. And here's why I was wrong. I thought that the offense would show up and play with some heart. I thought the offense would show up and play like they're not scared. I'm going to be honest. The offensive line looked petrified. They were allowing Shedeur Sanders to be under pressure the entire game. He was sacked. Let's see. I think it was 3 or 4 times and pressured a lot more. Sacked 3 times, hit a couple times, and it was just all around a terrible performance there. And it was just It was a tough loss for Colorado. I think there's a few things. There's a couple silver linings to take away for Colorado. Obviously, you are ranked. This is by this time in the season, most people thought Colorado would be 1-2, 1-3. But they're heading into the USC matchup 3-1, which is pretty good, I guess you could say. But to talk about the game itself, Dan Lanning kind of made it clear that he was going to come hard at this Colorado team. And they were kind of sick of all the narratives around Colorado. And I'm going to bring up the clip that went viral at halftime because I think this was a perfect representation of the game. Not because I thought that Colorado wasn't going to perform, but I think this is just the mindset that Oregon came into the game with. And it was evident that they were coming in to not just beat Colorado, but they were coming in to destroy Colorado, and they looked like the much better team. So let me share my screen real quick so we could get this up. Yep.
Rooted in substance, not flash. Rooted in substance. Today, we talk with our pads. You talk with your helmet, right? Every moment. The Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks. We're fighting for wins. There's a difference, right? There's a difference. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood. It's going to be played on the grass. Right? It's going to be played on the grass. Let's go.
Yeah, and you saw the fire there. And honestly, the game was one that I don't know if the game was actually played on Hollywood. I think there was a lot of narratives that kind of made it seem like Colorado was only caring about the attention. Lanning went on to say that they're playing for clicks. We're playing for wins. I wouldn't say Colorado's playing for clicks. I think Colorado is a team that went 1-11 last year, brought in a new coach who completely revamped the roster, flipped an entire roster, and they got off to a hot start. They beat a ranked TCU team that likely wasn't as good as we thought they were going to be. They beat up on a Nebraska team that looked pretty bad. And then they beat up on they beat Colorado State. I wouldn't say they beat up on them. They beat Colorado State in double overtime. This Oregon team is a top 10 team. They have playoff potential. They have Pac-12 title potential. And I think we kind of got a good litmus test of where Colorado currently is. And I would say they are a team that could win football games. I don't think this is going to lead to like a historic losing streak by any means. Next week they have USC. That'll be a tough matchup. But after that, they have, I don't know the order, but I know they have Arizona State and Stanford. Those are both winnable games. So 7 games into the season, Colorado's likely going to be 5-2, 5-2, which is huge. Their win total was at 3.5. And I think a lot of people are going to use this game to kind of take a you-know-what on Deion Sanders in Colorado, because that's the main reason that people watched Coach Prime in Colorado. For every single fan out there, or every person who supported Colorado or supported Coach Prime and what he was doing, there's about 5 fans that were waiting for him to fail. That's just how it is. It's how it's been reported. We saw when they said that they had we saw that when they said that Colorado had the worst roster, excuse me. And realistically, it was just kind of overreaction. I think a lot of the coverage of Colorado has been an overreaction on both ways. Maybe I overreacted a little too quickly. They got Arizona State after USC, then Stanford. For someone in the comments saying I don't know the schedule, there it is. But yeah, I think there was a big overreaction. I think maybe I took too much out of the wins, and maybe I just didn't expect. Let me just a second. There we go. Here's what I didn't expect. And I said this at the beginning. So for those of you joining us right now and didn't see, I fully expected this to be a shootout. I never once was like, you know what? Colorado's defense has shown me enough to be like, they could slow down Bo Nix. I had no doubts in my mind that Bo Nix was going to put up a Heisman caliber performance, and he probably did, and probably could have put up more numbers if he didn't get pulled. He went 28 of 33 for 276 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick, completed 85% of his passes. He didn't rush from much, 5 carries for 9 yards and a score. So 4 total touchdowns for Bo Nix. That wasn't shocking to me at all. Every show I went on, I said, this Colorado defense is going to struggle, but the offense is where they're going to make up for it. The offense is what's going to mask the struggles on defense. And the offense didn't. The offensive line let Shedeur down. I would say the play calling let the team down in a sense that it was just knowing what Oregon was going to do. I think at first the play calling was obviously you run out there with the script. So your first 5 to 10 plays are planned out, but there was no adjustments made that were effective. And I think that's the tough part. There was a lot of plays that seemed like they were taking a long time to develop, and Shedeur was running for his life or getting hit in the backfield and just didn't have time for those plays to develop. The run game was putrid. The run game was ineffective, as it has been all year. And so, yeah, I think if you're a Colorado fan, the silver lining is you're 3-1, 4 games into the season. Most people thought you'd be 1-3, 2-2 at best. So hold your hat on that, or hang your hat on that, because there's still room to grow. Are you probably going to be a ranked team next week? Probably not. You're probably going to drop out of the rankings, and that's okay. You have a big test next week against USC, but you overexceeded expectations for the first month. They have a lot of things to work on, but if you're a Colorado fan, there's still plenty of reasons to be excited. I think a lot of the people that are like, see, Colorado was never good. That's just not true. I think that's an overreaction, just like a lot of the other things were. Colorado was the most exciting story in college football for 3 weeks. And there's nothing that you could say that would change anyone's mind. Like, it literally, you would be technically kind of crazy to consider Colorado not the biggest storyline. They had First Take, the Pat McAfee Show, Game Day, Big Noon Kickoff, The Rock, Offset, Chauncey Billups. Everybody was there. Everybody was interested in Colorado. Everyone's interested in Deion Sanders. And I don't think that's going to change. I just think this game showed that Colorado is not yet at the level where they could compete with a team like Oregon. I think the trenches are their biggest downfall. And I'm going to talk about that a little more when I get to my takeaways. But up first, I need you guys to know that this live and an episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people, for your team faster and for free. Maybe Colorado needs to find some linemen on LinkedIn that could actually block. So if you want to hire the perfect candidate, add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you could quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, we are back. We're recapping the Colorado game. It was a bludgeoning. It was probably the worst game I've seen in a hot minute. It looked like a Colorado game of last year. Colorado was outmatched from the jump. My takeaways. Here's the biggest one. That 3rd and 17 punt, or 3rd and 17, that 4th down punt on the 17-yard line. where they faked it and ran it and obviously got it, was absolutely the dagger. I know that was only I think that was in the first quarter or the second quarter, but that was as rough as it gets. And I think that took pretty much all the momentum, any momentum that Colorado could have had, took the wind right out of their sails. Let me see. Yeah, it was second quarter, early in the second quarter. Colorado had stopped them. It was 13-0. They forced a punt, and it was like, okay, finally, Colorado's going to score. They're going to answer. And Oregon, Dan Lanning, great call, by the way, because that was effectively the dagger. I don't think Colorado was ever able to even show hope after that. And that kind of decided the game, realistically. Obviously, the game looked like it was well in hand prior to that, but that fake punt took the wind out of Colorado's sails. Here's some of my takeaways, though, from the game. One, the offensive line is going to continue to hinder this team until they figure something out. And I don't know what there is to figure out. For lack of an explanation, they need to block. Like, that is their job, and they're not blocking well enough. Shedeur was sacked. I think I said this already 3 times. They had 6 pass breakups. So Shedeur was constantly under pressure, having to throw into tight windows. He was hit a couple times. That was horrendous. That offensive line, they couldn't run the ball either. Colorado finished the game with 40 yards total on 1.6 yards per carry, which will certainly not help their 2 yards per carry average on the season. The run game, I was under the impression that we were going to see Alton McCaskill. I think Dylan Edwards is a great talent. I think he has a lot to offer, but I don't think he's an every down back that should be. I don't think he's an every down back that needs to be running between the tackles every single time. It's kind of disappointing that we haven't seen Smoke. We don't see Hankerson. And I'm really confused. Like, I knew Alton McCaskill was banged up, and this was the first week that he was ready to go, but I thought ready to go meant they were going to use him. They didn't use him until the very end of the game, where if you look at his stats, he was the second most effective run. Or no, he was not. He had 17 yards under 5 carries. The run game was just rendered useless. And I think obviously when you're down by 17 points in the first half, it's kind of difficult to run the ball. But if you establish the run and actually are able to establish the run, it kind of defeats the whole like having to respect the run aspect of the game. And they did not have to respect the run. I thought we would see Alton McCaskill more. So that was a takeaway of mine. So offensive line, not blocking well enough for Shedeur, not helping the offense establish the run. Also, this Colorado team is looking more and more undisciplined every single week. There was very minimal penalties by them against TCU, but they had 12 penalties for 103 yards today with, let's see, 12 penalties for 103 yards, and Oregon had 9 for 80, but 103 yards is literally, at one point they had more, or it was like a 5-yard difference. They had almost as many penalty yards than they had offensive yards, which was obviously horrible. You can't, if your offensive line is not going to block, you're not going to establish a run game. Shedeur Sanders kind of played what I would say is his worst game, maybe of his college career. I don't know. I would say it's definitely his worst game of his Colorado career. By the way, this is Kevin Borba, your show Locked On Buffs every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, the offense line can't perform like that. You can't be costly penalties. There was one where they had slowed Oregon down, forced what was supposed to be a 4th down. Oregon probably would have settled for a field goal. And there was a penalty. I forgot what the call was. And Oregon got a 1st down and then scored the very next play. It was utterly a terrible showing. Obviously, I think Coach Prime probably ripped into these guys at halftime and after the game. It's a disappointing result. Other takeaways. Let's go look at Bo Nix. I would say outside the one interception, he played amazing. He is a Heisman candidate through and through. That Bo, I don't know what his Heisman campaign thing is, but the Bo Heisman campaign is probably going quite well at the moment. Also, the defensive backs, the secondary, they struggled. I think we all knew that they'd struggle without Travis Hunter. But there was like a kind of a expectation or maybe a hope. It was like, okay, they got guys like Kenneth Briglove who played at Ole Miss, or they have Travis Jay who made his debut today and looked pretty. He struggled, to say the least. There was one drive where he had a penalty, got thrown off by a running back, like got thrown to the ground basically. and then gave up a touchdown. That secondary was pitiful. It was a tough performance, and it kind of shows the lack of depth at corner. For the, I think the second week in a row, a team had a receiver just absolutely demolish them. They didn't have as many guys go for 100 yards like Colorado State, but they throw out receivers a lot. Troy Franklin had 8 catches for 126 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 16 yards per catch. Trayshawn Holden, 4 catches, 52 yards, 13 yards per catch. Yeah, they just knew what their game plan was. The secondary was picked apart. If you're a Colorado fan, you have to realize how important Travis Hunter was to this defense, because the defense as a group was struggling with Travis Hunter on the field. It was just him being on the field always had that possibility of making a huge play, and they didn't have that. Obviously, they brought guys back from injury, but you were missing Carter Stoutmeyer, the freshman DB who had played well and was actually one of the guys pushing Omarion Cooper for the starting spot outside of Travis Hunter. It's kind of disappointing that, like, this is nothing to discredit Cormani McClain and nothing to question Coach Prime. But if you're a Colorado fan, you would love for Cormani McClain to be ready to play. And obviously, Coach Prime said he's not ready. The biggest thing slowing him down is himself, is what he said. And so it's just disappointing when you see the secondary. It was a tough performance. Bo Nix really had no issues at all slicing and dicing this defense. Let's take a look at the numbers for Oregon. They finished the day with 282 yards passing, 282 yards rushing. They averaged 9.4 yards per carry, that's 9.4 yards per catch. They averaged 6.3 yards per carry, 240 yards rushing. So if you want to do that math, that is a total of 522 yards given up to Colorado's 522 yards given up for Colorado. Colorado only got 199 yards of offense, which was horrible. 40 yards of rushing to Oregon's 240. Oregon had 30 first downs. Colorado had 13. Oregon had 73 plays. Colorado only had 58. The average yards for Colorado went 3.4. The average yards for Oregon went 7.2. Red zone, Oregon was 5 for 6. Turnovers, they only had 1. They had 1, and they had a fumble, but they didn't lose a fumble. So they only had 1. It was just, it's really, when you have this many position groups struggle, it's going to be tough to win. So that's not really a hot take by any means, but when your quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, has his worst game, he just really never had a chance to get into rhythm. The offense line wasn't blocking long enough for him. The offense line was struggling. If they can't block, that's difficult. The run game, again, continues to be ineffective, which, again, shows how difficult it is to win games. And the defense, just as a whole, was not where it needed to be. So if you have like 4 or 5 categories of struggling, that is not a recipe for success. I would actually say that is a recipe for a blowout loss to number 10 Eugene, because that is exactly what happened. Before we continue, this episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by one of our sponsors, a great sponsor of ours, Athletic Brewing. We all know that it's enjoyable to watch a game with a drink, a cold one. Now it's time for your game. My game changer of the week was probably that Bo Nix led Oregon offense. They absolutely sliced that Colorado defense. So they have to be the game changer of the week, much like the Oregon offense. Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. I myself took the little survey, found out which flavor was for me, found my perfect one. It was delicious. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full of flavor, and well-crafted, just like a full-strength brew. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning, and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They're fit for all time, so you can drink them anytime, anywhere, and make any activity more enjoyable. If you're a Colorado fan and wish that game was more enjoyable, you should have had an Athletic brew, because at least that would have been enjoyable to have with you. You could find Athletic in-store, online, and at bars around the country. They're the fastest growing non-alcoholic brewing company in the U.S., so get on board. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy them online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. It's near the beer aisle. Exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Let me get this going. Okay, what's next for Colorado? Obviously, I think there's a lot of, um, and I think this is a great point. Best thing about this game: 7 more games, 7 more opportunities. Yeah, I would say I believe there's 8 more games though because we played 12. But still, nonetheless, yeah, there's 8 more games left. Great mindset to have right there. For Colorado, you take one day, you sulk, you're like, damn, that sucked. That was horrible. Um, they cooked us. Dan Lanning and Oregon got the best of us. You take one day, 24 hours, you move on. Because next week you have USC, who will want to do the same thing to you again at home, in front of all your fans, in front of your entire fan base, and that would be embarrassing as well. So you take the day, you sulk, you do whatever you need to do to deal with this. This Colorado team has not really handled adversity like this. They obviously came back against Colorado State, and that was adversity, and they were able to beat TCU in a shootout, and that's adversity. But getting blown out on the national stage, I'm sure when we get the numbers for this game, there was probably north of 10 million, 12 million people watching the game. But you take a day, you move on, you focus on USC. And even then, you take a moment to realize there are still so many more games to play. Looking at Colorado's schedule, let me pull it up right here. They have this is their toughest 2 week slate, and most people were saying by this point they would be 1-3 or 1-4 by the time they got to USC. So they're 3-1 by the time you play USC. Regardless of how that game goes, you win, great. You're 5-1, you lose. You're 3-2. Then you play an Arizona State team who is probably one of the worst teams in college football. Same thing the following week. Excuse me. You play Stanford, a struggling Stanford team that's rebuilding. You could win those 2 games, and all of a sudden you go from 3-2 to 5-2. Then you go to Pasadena to take on a UCLA team that they lost to Utah, who was without their starting quarterback and like 12 starters today. UCLA is a solid team. You could beat them. Oregon State, tough matchup. Arizona, you could beat them. You could probably beat Washington State if you're able to contain the pass somewhat, because their defense is bad. And then you got Utah. So 7 to 9 wins is still very much in play for this. I see a comment that says, "Say it now that you think CU is beating SC." I don't know about that one. I have to take some time. Every game matters until it doesn't. This Oregon game no longer can matter to Colorado. This cannot derail your season. This cannot derail any of the momentum that you built. Obviously, you don't want to live in the past and just be like, well, we had a great 3 first weeks. But think of those first 3 weeks. Think of that feeling and get back to that feeling, because sulking on this loss will only hurt you. What's next I think, one, there's going to be a lot of Coach Prime and a lot of Colorado hate, as expected. When you're a story this big and a figure this controversial, there's a lot of people that are showing their true personalities that kind of just root on people's downfalls. I think there's a difference between, one, the people that are joking with me or making fun of me for getting my prediction wrong. Sure, makes sense. I got my prediction wrong. I said Colorado was going to win this game. I was wrong. I have my little dunce hat on. Imagine right here, little dunce hat. But for those that are just happy for the sake of Coach Prime losing, I think that says more about you as a person than it does about the Colorado Buffaloes. But listen, people wanted this to happen. They got their wish. There's going to be a lot more moments to be happy about if you're a Colorado fan, and there's going to be a lot more tough moments. This is not how the Buffs wanted their game against Oregon to go. They had a chance to make a statement, and they severely underwhelmed. They have a lot of things to improve, and following this game up with USC next week will not be easy at all. But yeah, I'm just looking through the comments to see if there's any questions. The post-game interviews will be the post-game interviews will be fascinating, because I think Coach Prime is going to hold his team accountable, and he's probably going to go just as hard on anybody or on the team. And I appreciate the support here from Sharon. Yeah, still locked on Buffs. Appreciate you. Disappointed for sure. Yeah, I think disappointing is a good feeling. I think Coach Prime should make them watch. Obviously, they're going to watch film, but he's going to say, look at this game, think of how it made you feel, and let's figure out a way to never feel that way again. Because that was a horrible performance all around. Oregon dominated in every aspect of the game, and it was truly a tough showing for Colorado fans in Colorado. Keep your head up. There's plenty of football left to be played, and just wasn't your week. For Oregon fans, congrats on the win. You guys are clearly one of the best teams in the country. And you guys look like you have a great chance to make the playoff and make it to the Pac-12 title game and maybe win that sucker as well. So for those of you tuning in for the live, I appreciate you guys. I'm Kevin Borba. For those of you that watch us after the fact, I appreciate you for your support. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Monday, where we will again talk about it. You guys have a great day. Enjoy your Saturday. It's the weekend. Colorado fans, go decompress somehow, because that was a tough showing, and we all know if you believe, the Buffs will be back.